Good morning, this is Kel Land on the go with all you need to know in news and weather as you begin your day.
A fiery SUV versus train crash in Brookings County has left 2 people dead and a community shaken by the tragedy and extent of damage. This is drone video taken Saturday of the crash site at a railroad crossing on South Dakota Highway 13 in Elkton. The collision happened Friday night when investigators say the driver of a Kia Sorento crashed through the warning arm at the crossing and struck the train.
The Sorento caught fire, trapping 2 people inside. They both died at the scene. The collision caused the train to derail and crash into a grain elevator. Firefighter Jeff Brunstein was among the first responders who were called to the crash scene.
We haven't had anything like that in town for as long as I've been here. So it's we had a train derailment a few years ago, but it was just a derailment. It wasn't the cars didn't get all bent up like this one did.
The derailment closed Highway 13 for several hours before it reopened to traffic on Saturday. Cornell Avenue in Elkton is expected to be closed for several days while crews remove the derailed train cars. Law enforcement, private business owners, and school administrators took part in ALICE training this week in Rapid City. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate.
It's used in critical situations such as a shooting. This class helps school resource officers and others to be educated on what to do in these situations.
Our school resource officers do a lot of different things. I mean, not only are they law enforcement that handles law enforcement issues within the school, but they're also they're counselors to some degree, and they're teachers to some degree.
The goal now is for everyone who participated in ALICE training to get their staff up to speed for the school year.
Now let's get a check of our weather with meteorologist Scott Monk. Good morning, Scott.
All right, good morning, everybody. Be prepared for the heat and the humidity. Today we'll have that heat index easily into the triple digits. That will continue for many in central and eastern KELOLAND as we go over the next several days. And this is just an example of that. It's a combination of the air temperature and the amount of humidity that's in the air. So on a day where we have an air temperature of 92 degrees, you throw in that humidity, and that's the reason why that heat index jumps into the triple digits. And we'll see that probably for the next several days. Now, as we do take a look at what's expected for today with our actual forecast, the air temperature will reach the 90s and the 100s. And at times, we'll have that heat index approaching 110. More details on the KELOLAND Live Doppler forecast coming up.
Thank you, Scott. Jennifer Slade Hansen of Aberdeen is no longer chairwoman of the South Dakota Democratic Party. She was recalled from office Saturday in a vote by the party's Central Committee. No one voted against recalling her. However, several committee members abstained from the vote. Slade Hansen has 7 days to file an appeal. The appeals committee then would have 13 days to consider it.
Slade Hansen faced accusations of creating a hostile work environment and engaging in activity that violated the state party constitution. Vice Chair Shane Merrill of Parker is the interim chair until a vote for a new chairperson can be taken next month. Today, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem joined several other governors in Texas for a news conference. The group will discuss their joint efforts under Operation Lone Star concerning border security in Texas.
Earlier this summer, Noem announced she would be deploying at least 50 South Dakota National Guard troops to respond to the southern border. Several states, including Iowa and Nebraska, have already sent troops to the border with Mexico. Governor Noem is asking for public input when it comes to naming a replacement for Republican Senator Jessica Castleberry, who resigned on Thursday. The governor's office asked for nominations to be submitted by September 18th. Castleberry was appointed by Noem to the position in 2019. She was formally elected in November 2020 and re-elected in 2022. Castleberry resigned after the Attorney General announced a resolution over the senator's use of COVID-19 funds for her preschool business. She'll have to repay $499,000.
That's a look at some of our top stories.
Now let's get one last look at your weather with meteorologist Brian Karstens. Brian?
All right, our forecast today. Well, the numbers that really count, that's the heat index. And speaking of that, let's go to the maps in Sioux Falls. Where do we end up today? Well, it's right around 109, maybe a couple degrees either side of that. Those are pretty high numbers. That's dangerous heat. Now, it's one thing to have one day of that. It's another to string together a few days of high heat index values. And I'm afraid to say, but tomorrow we're going to be probably still in the 100s. We do have some wind, which is a bit of a trade-off. You know, that can be helpful in some circumstances, but also in this particular case, that's a southwest wind from Chamberlain to Sioux Falls. And you have to remember that the air coming in from the west, we're actually pushing out some of the desert air because of that hurricane or that tropical storm remnant of Hillary out there in California and Arizona and Nevada. And so what's happening here now is that we progress in the week, and we might actually see, for some of us, those dew points actually going down a little bit. And what happens typically then is the actual air temperature can go higher. The feels-like temperature usually stays about the same. So that's why most of those numbers kind of flatten out there by midweek. Those are little nuances, things to think about, but the overall effect is it's going to be very stressful on people, plants, pets, and just basically a lot of aspects of life when you're dealing with outdoor weather. You've got to pace yourself and be aware of the heat. It'd be nice to catch some rain. Not likely to see much of that, although there are a couple of things that tease us this week in the Black Hills, and certainly this forecast by Friday, if we end up getting a tropical piece that comes up kind of conjunction with some Gulf moisture that comes around the bend into Colorado and eventually spills out into the plains, might be a decent shot at moisture for Nebraska, maybe parts of South Dakota. What our biggest challenge on this feature will be is the placement of this trajectory of rain. It's probably going to be a swath, and it'll come through parts of the plains, but it doesn't necessarily cover all of South Dakota. So we'll keep an eye on that. If it would shift northward a little bit more, that would be very helpful, but jury's still on the exact track of that. Big story, what we know for sure is the heat. It's just a matter of how hot. 101 today in Chamberlain, 102 in Winter, about 102 degrees in Pierre. The forecast for tonight will drop back into the 70s. With that kind of start, we're into the 100s again tomorrow from basically Phillip and Pierre all the way to Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls at 103, which would tie a record. And then Wednesday, too, is in record territory. Thursday, not a lot better, mid-90s. But Friday could offer some relief, and then hopefully by the weekend, we'll get those highs down into the 80s. Aberdeen also looking at cooler weather by the end of the week. One other little piece of information I thought I'd deliver is Wednesday night, there's some activity in North Dakota, some storms that may end up dropping south. We don't have that in the forecast right now, but I wanted to at least verbally mention that. And also for Pierre and Rapid City, the worst of the heat is the next 3 days. And then by Thursday, Friday, some pieces of that tropical moisture, that monsoon flow, will come in through the Rockies, and eventually Rapid City and the Black Hills will start picking that up. And that's definitely worth your attention. Hopefully we'll get some moisture at that point down the road. Check out more details, a lot more to say about the heat online at KENDLELAND.com.